and Land Use Management Committee. I've been joined by the Honorable Council Members Jose Huizar and Mitch Linder. I want to thank you for coming to City Hall and braving the parking situation and making it into this chamber. It's November 20th, 2012. We have several items on the agenda and quite a few cards actually. And we do have the policy of addressing those items that have our police department involved in cases so that we can get them out in the field quicker. And I believe item number 7, but let me do this really fast and see if there's any continuances. Item number 1 has cards. Call that special. Item 2, no cards. Item 3, we have cards. Item 4, no cards. That one we can move on consent. Item 5, if my colleagues agree. 5, we do have a card. That's on 5. 6, no cards on 6. And 7, we do have quite a few cards. And item 8, we have the presentation. So, let's see. On items 4, we can move that to consent. Does I have a second on that? Are you guys okay with that? It's item 4. And then item 6, we can move. It's a modification. The council office does agree and support the project. And with the modifications from planning that were requested by the applicant, we can move on that as well. Have a second on 8, if you guys agree. Second. So, I'm sorry, on number 6. Okay, thank you. So we can move those 2 items. And the rest we call special due to cards. And so let's jump to item number 7. And let's have the staff come on up.
Good afternoon, committee members. This is Su Cheng with the City Planning Department. This item number 7 is a nuisance abatement application which was referred by LAPD for nuisance abatement at this location. This site is, the subject premise is a freestanding hamburger shop known as Thamesburger number 6. The appellant is a business owner and operator at this location. This location has been identified as a problem location to the police department for assorted criminal activities resulting in a public nuisance. This property has been neglected for proper maintenance to the extent that the menu was not even legible because the display boards were all covered by graffiti. Between May 1st, 2009 to February 13, 2012, the LAPD made 58 responses to the subject location, including 2 homicide incidents in the parking lot for the last 2 years. This appellant has been operating Thamesburger since 1986, and this situation continues. Just a few days ago, on November 14, the LAPD arrested the individuals who involved in narcotic transactions on the subject property. As part of this determination, a total of 22 conditions were imposed. Majority of those conditions were recommended by the LAPD. In my personal opinion, those conditions are best management practice conditions. Without even being imposed or required, the business owner and operator should have been done with those management practice to begin with. Particularly, the applicant appeals the entire determination, particularly condition number 11, 12, 13, and 18. I just want to bring it up to your attention that condition number 11 restricts hours of operation to 6 a.m. to 12 midnight during the week, and 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. on Friday and Saturday. Right now, Thamesburg opens 24 hours daily. In my opinion, these conditions were recommended by LAPD. In my opinion, these hours are very generous compared to the nuisance activities occurring at this location. Let me give you a good example. There is another Thamesburger at Manchester and Figueroa, about 10 or 15 blocks north from this location. That has the same environment in surrounding properties. They have similar crime data, but that establishment is sparkling clean. Their operation does not create any problem. They close at 10 p.m. for their dining hours, except that their drive-through operation, they open until 11 p.m. So if this committee chooses to, you can further restrict those hours from whatever required at this in my determination to further restrict to 10 or 11 p.m. or whatever hours this committee feels appropriate. Condition number 12 requires a security guard, and also condition number 13 requires the installation of a surveillance camera, and condition number 18, a 6-foot-high wrought iron fence was required to enclose the parking lot. That is to mitigate some graffiti situation when the business is not in operation. The appellant has a lease until 2024. At the hearing, he said he has a lease until 2034, but the property owner mentioned that they have a lease until July 31st, 2024. The property owner, First California Bank, offered the applicant to break the lease, but that offer was refused. Without imposition of these mitigation measures, no progress is expected in any time soon. So staff recommends this committee to deny this appeal and sustain my determination with maybe possible modification of those hours as I indicated in condition number 11 and retain the remaining operating hours. And I'll be available for your questions.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Any questions for our staff on this item? Seeing no questions, thank you, ma'am. So let's ask our officers to come on up as part of the presentation from the staff, and then I'll ask the appellant to come on up afterwards. So officers, welcome, sir.
How you doing, sir?
Great.
My name is Gerald Woodyard. I'm the patrol commanding officer at Southeast area, and I've worked here in Southeast Division in a number of occasions. I've worked as a police officer, I've worked vice here. I've also worked as a watch commander, so I'm really familiar with Southeast area. And from a holistic standpoint, TAMS has created a lot of issues in terms of calls for service. In the last 3 years, we've had over 150 calls for service in and around TAMS. And so without going into the minute details, I'll actually pass it over to DSVD. But I am in agreement with the conditions that have been set forth. And obviously, they brought up that they wanted some more restrictive conditions in terms of the time that they're operating, and I'm in agreement with that as well.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honorable Board. My name is Patrick Shields. I'm a lieutenant with the Los Angeles Police Department, assigned to Detective Support and Vice Division, and I oversee the whole division, but specifically the abatement unit. And today we're here for, as you know, Tam's Burgers, located at 10023 South Figueroa Street. And I'll introduce my detectives here shortly, but I can reiterate that we've had numerous calls for service at the location, including loitering, narcotics, prostitution, gang activity, assaults, and even shootings. And this investigation with Detective Support and Vice Division started approximately two years ago and is continuing. And to put it in perspective, unfortunately, TAMS has been completely non-responsive in all of our recommendations, which has led us to this board hearing. Additionally, I have seen many reports cross my desk seeking compliance with TAMS, as we have given them every opportunity to comply with our corrections and their deficiencies, again with negative results. We want TAMS to be a successful business, and this has been proven with all the TAMS burgers located throughout the greater Los Angeles area. However, the Century Boulevard and Figueroa location has not been business-friendly as well as community-friendly, and this is the reason for the necessity for us to be here. They're open 24 hours to the public, which creates a different, we feel, more responsibility for them. And in that, I would like to introduce Detective Eric Moore, who has the community problem units, and Detective Mike Dickus, who have all the stats that we've completed over the last 2 years. With that, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you again, Detective.
Hey, thank you. Again, I'm Detective Eric Moore. I am the officer in charge of the citywide nuisance abatement unit. And I just want to speak briefly, as you will hear a more detailed account from Officer Mike Dickus. But this location is a priority location for me. I oversee all the abatements within the city. And this location is a top priority, obviously because of the crime activity that you will hear, and from because of the outcry that we've heard from the community as well as other officers that this location definitely needs mitigation. I believe that the proposed conditions are fair. I do agree that with the zoning administrator that it would probably be even more effective if the hours were even reduced further. As we were generous. Again, I want to support the zoning administrator's conditional use permit, and that's it. And you'll hear from Officer Mike Dickus.
One question, Detective Moore.
Yes, sir.
There's observations that state that the crime in the area is already there and that this business is caught in the crossfire. And the other argument that the business itself is a stimuli, it's a spark plug that creates this tension that results in crime. It's a chicken and egg
Yes, I can.
So do our statistics and our observations weigh one way or the other? Can you speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. I believe the evidence that you will hear, the testimony provided, will show a clear nexus with Thames, the location, as being an anchor, and I believe and center of some of the criminal activity, as well as there are other locations. I'm responsible, as I said, citywide for all the nuisance abatements. This location has been a location that has been not responsive. There are numerous, the zoning administrator mentioned, there's another Tams that is similarly situated that does not have the issues. There are a number of restaurants up and down Figueroa Corridor that aren't the subject of our investigative focus. I think that it's a poor argument for them to simply say that it's this area, whereas there are other businesses in the area that are thriving that do not have the crime nexus that this location has.
And I do know for a fact, and I'll say this for the record, that you have personally been involved in helping our office clean up Westlake and MacArthur Park, so I respect your observations and your assertions here, and I've always been thankful and take every moment I can to say thank you again.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And
person.
you'll be hearing from Officer Mike Dickus, the lead IO in this investigation.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Officer Michael Dickus. I work Detective Support Vice Division. I currently handle nuisance abatement investigations in South Bureau. I fully concur with what the zoning administrator had said. I'm not going to be redundant up here. I just wanted to touch on a couple of key notes. During the abatement process, we give each and every business and property owner an opportunity with suggested conditions prior to us coming to the city attorney's office or to the zoning administrator's office for these type of proceedings. We want our suggested conditions taken by those business owners and implemented prior to that, so we don't have to incur these kinds of things. And I brought this to the attention of the business owner back in September of 2011, where I sent out an investigator contact card reaching out to him to contact me. Back in November of 2011, I had no response, but I had sent out a list of suggested conditions along with a nuisance abatement letter depicting that their location is currently under investigation for possible abatement proceedings. In return, I did get a phone call from Mr. Jack Benetatos, who left a phone message on my desk that I'll read for you in quotes. I quote, "I'm the business owner which was responsible for the inside, not the outside. There are a lot of problems outside with transients and drug dealers. That's a police problem, not mine. So I knew right away that we were kind of dealing with a business owner that maybe would not be forthcoming in with the suggested conditions. Therefore, we proceeded with the zoning administrator's hearing. In June 21st of this year, we did have the zoning administrator's hearing where the operator was present. We did basically present what you guys have in the file and you guys have read prior. During those proceedings, Ms. Chang had basically informed the operator that she was going to impose some sort of conditions on this property, but she was not definite of what conditions they were. During that particular hearing, the business owner ended up leaving in the middle of the hearing, which I thought was disrespectful to the process and disrespectful to Ms. Chang. And, unfortunately, this is the kind of business owner that we're dealing with here today. I'm going to touch a little bit on what has been brought forth with the Manchester and Figueroa TAMs. You guys can take it upon yourself at any time to drive down Figueroa and see this particular location. It's well taken care of. It's manicured. It has palm trees, grass. The general appearance is drastically different from what we're dealing with down on the Century and Figueroa. I'm going to give a couple of numbers. Ms. Chang had said that there was 58 calls for service at this particular location, which is correct. However, there was roughly 150 to almost 200 calls for service in and around that area dealing at 101st and Figueroa and Century and Figueroa. Now, granted that they can't take responsibility for each and every one of those calls for service, but this particular location is the only open business other than the gas station that is on the corner of Century and Figueroa. This is primarily a residential area, and there's not a lot of businesses for them to cater to.
Is there a general sense of period of time in which these calls are made? Are they made
Yes,
mostly
sir.
in the nighttime, early
Yes.
morning? Is there a general understanding?
From at the actual location, 31 of those calls for service were between the hours of 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. The calls for service from the rest of the numbers that I had crunched were roughly about 50% were occurring between the hours of 8 p.m. and 5 p.m.
Okay.
Once again, the hours of operation that we have talked about, closing at midnight during the week and 2 a.m. on the weekend, I think is very gracious, given the fact that this particular area, again, there's not a movie theater, there's not any other business, restaurant, or something that would say, hey, maybe we can go get something to eat after we've done whatever we've done in this particular area. I think the general public, and you'll hear from some of those citizens today, will say that, hey, if we patronize at Tam's Burgers, it's sometime, between, say, 8 a.m. and dark. I think that's the general consensus. So I think anything after those particular hours is catering to the criminal element.
Thank you, sir.
Like I said, I'd like to read a couple of the citizen declarations I have that are probably different from some of the ones that will come up here and testify today, just so that they are read into record. I'm sure that you guys also have a copy of it as well. I'm going to omit those names just for the purposes of protecting
Can you just give us one or two examples? I think we'll get the gist of it.
Yes, sir. This is a quote. I've observed pimps, prostitutes, and others hanging out at Tams. There has been shootings there, and it's been on the local news. That's the Tams at Figueroa and 101st. Loitering, Tams, prostitution at Tams. I don't feel safe at Tams. Just the overall gist of that.
Okay.
But thank you for your time, and if you guys have any questions.
Thank you, officer. I don't. Any questions from my colleagues? Seeing none. Thank you very much for your hard work
Thank you, sir.
and good presentation. Very succinct. Okay, so now we'll move towards our appellants, and we have with us two names that are representing, I believe there's Michael Thomas, attorney for Tam's Burgers, and then we have Nick Benetados with Tam's Burgers. So you both can come up, or one at a time, however you please. Let's just start with 3 minutes, and then we'll see if we need to any more.
Good afternoon. Michael Thomas for the appellant, Tam's Burger, and Nick Benetados. I just wanted to address a few points. All of our points are in the justification for appeal, but I did want to respond to some of the statements that have been made.
Just keep your eye on the clock as you do that.
Okay. The officer spoke about beginning an outreach in September 2011. As we indicated in our appeal, there's a chronology here that's been deliberately left out of the appeal. Of the zoning administrator's decision, which is the fact that there has been a history of voluntary compliance by Mr. Benetatos. There was outreach by the LAPD in 2010 to remove seating as something that might help loitering, so he complied with that. That's omitted from the record, and it was testified to at the hearing. He eliminated a breezeway, which was a corridor. He eliminated a payphone. He's turned over video to the police. And most importantly, I'd like this as part of the record, he signed a trespass arrest authorization. He provided it to the LAPD, and they haven't acted on it. We don't have a problem with reasonable measures, but the city has not exhausted reasonable measures here. They haven't enforced the most logical, effective thing. If loitering is the major problem here, then all they have to do is utilize the trespass authorization. There's been a lot of comparison with the TAMs at Manchester and Figueroa. I would just represent to you that the crime statistics in the surrounding area are dramatically different. At that corner of Century and Figueroa, and right across the street from TAM's, there's a hotel, and there is some activity involving potential prostitutes walking right in front of the hotel. That's not TAM's Burger. That is in the surrounding area. And there are some other problems, but if you look at the actual...
I'm sorry, how close is this hotel or motel?
Right across the street.
Across the street?
And that's obviously 24 hours. There's a gas station at the corner. That's 24 hours. There isn't a nexus. There's not criminal activity that's emanating from the property. There's some activity in the area, but there's not a connection between the business and the crime. One of the things we pointed out in our appeal is this hours restriction doesn't make sense. If you look at the zoning administrator's decision, they highlighted criminal activity. None of it was within the restricted time period. So there is no evidence to support any criminal activity during the period of time they're trying to shut the business down, which for 30 years has been 24 hours. And we believe what's going on is a bank has foreclosed. They do not want to honor the lease. They would like to get a tenant that may be more profitable, but the community itself supports the business. And I understand there may have been a few declarations from people, but there's a lack of precision from what I hear. There is prostitution in the area, and there was an LAPD surveillance operation. There is currently a camera 24 hours pointed at TAMS, and the city has had every opportunity to act on whatever they find. And there's no evidence of any connection between prostitution. This is not people don't go get a burger for prostitution. There's no connection.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
I just like, just for the record, I would like to submit the signed trespass authorization form.
Submit it to the clerk, please. Thank you, sir. Can we have Mr. Benetatos? Like to come on up?
Also, I'd like to submit the first list of suggested improvements. There was a dialogue between the LAPD and Mr. Benetatos, and the things that they asked for, no business would agree to. Internet access to the LAPD so that they can monitor the inside of the business. If you look at condition number 7, it's dramatically changed now that the conditions are imposed. So what he was asked to give up, it's not in here. Some of the things are very vague. Do not allow prostitutes, pimps, drug users or dealers, or homeless individuals to loiter on the property for any purpose.
What, if you submit it to our officer, we can look at that detail. If you allow Mr. Benatello to speak, if you're done.
The final thing I would say is there's only 3 or 4 conditions that we're arguing against, and they're the most cost prohibitive. It's the hours restriction, a fence, which makes absolutely no sense. It would just lock people in, a security guard, which they can't afford, and this video surveillance system. Those are the only 4. We're willing to cooperate, and we think that these measures should be a last resort, not a first resort.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Benteros? Give us your name and address for the record, please.
Nick Benetatos, 10023 South Figueroa Street, Los Angeles, California, 90003.
Sir, please.
My attorney pretty much covered everything. The only thing I'd like to say is, as far as the hour restriction, the building has been there for 50 years. I have been there for 27 years. It's only 800 square feet. We do our prepping between the hours of 12 and 6 when it's the slowest. It's not like we're making $1 million and I don't want to close because I'm making a profit. I know for a fact if we were to close, there would be going to be more crime. I know for a fact that we will be broken into. We've been there for all this time. We've never been robbed. The reason there is no other businesses in that area because we're the only business that withstood the riots. During the riots, when everything else was burnt down, we were helping the community by giving out loaves of bread, slices of ham so they can milk, everything. So we've been in the community. The community loves us. Like I said, there might be a few people, you're going to find a few people that are against you no matter what type of business you're in. We've withstood 3 recessions, currently this one that we're going through right now. We don't sell paraphernalia that would attract, we don't sell cigarettes, we don't sell drugs, we don't sell condoms, we don't sell alcohol. So nothing that we sell attracts. We don't condone it, but they're asking me and my employees to force my employees. They're also asking for me to tell my employees if they don't follow these conditions, they could be fired, which is wrong. I'm supposed to tell my employees that when a person walks up, you have 2 seconds to judge whether they're a prostitute, if they've had drugs, if they are using drugs, if they've ever sold drugs, if they're a criminal, if they're not a criminal, then you can sell them the hamburger. That's impossible. Like my attorney said, they came to me before 2010, asked me about, I had pay phones that I was making commission on, $200 a month. I took them out. They said, these phones are used for drug use. I took the phones out. They said, thank you very much. We appreciate all your help. That didn't really do anything. You still have a lot of loitering. Is it possible for you to take out your tables? Sure, I'll take out my tables. I took out the tables. My business dropped 15%. They're stating that the property doesn't look as good as the one on Manchester and Figueroa. First of all, the one on Manchester is not a 50-year-old building. Second of all, for the past 6 years, we've been going back and forth with different banks, foreclosing, another bank acquires it, so they constantly telling us that our lease is not going to be withheld. It's impossible for me to start spending money on the building with every week they're telling me this is your last week, you're going to be here, this is your last week, you're going to be here, this is the last week, you're going to be here. So if I can get an agreement with the bank and the board decides that I can make the building a more beautiful place. I don't have a problem with that, but I need to secure that and to know that I'm going to be there for long term.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. One question. A letter was read from one of the officers that clearly stated that you had a position where you didn't want to or didn't need to respond or cooperate.
Yeah.
Was that letter written by you?
No, it was not.
Who wrote that letter?
It wasn't a letter, it was a phone call by the leaseholder. I'm the business owner, I run the business, but I don't own the lease. I'm subleasing. So the property owner, the business owner, is the one who called the police and said, I'm not responsible for this or that, or I'm only responsible for the business.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll go into the public comment part of this hearing. We have with us, and that does conclude the presentation from the folks who are appealing. So let's have Esther Montilla, Moteila. Esther, come on up. Mabel Pittman. You can come on up to the microphone. And Karen Lawrence. Come on up. That way we can, and if you, some of you have written very nice letters, very important letters. If you keep your eye on the clock, that's the time we'll give you, is 1 minute. So just keep your eye on the clock and get to the important part of your letter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please give us your name.
I'd like to say good afternoon to everyone. I am a property owner. I've been in the same area at 931 East 95th for over 50 years. And we're concerned. I think all of the community is concerned about their property and what's going on in it. And I think a lot of times the businesses are there and they don't live in the area. So they can have all kind of things going on because they're not there. But if you live in the area, you want to keep your area looking decent and nice and people. So my concern is that if it's causing a nuisance, then it hurts the community. And if there's drugs or whatever's going on there, it hurts the community. You're afraid to even come out at night because these things are going on. So my concern is that we should be, everyone that lives in the community should be concerned about their community.
So,
I am.
so the decision we have to make is, do you support changing the hours and setting conditions of the business, lesser hours on the business? That's what's in front of us.
Well, I think that anything that is hindering your community should not be in there, or they should apply.
And you feel
by-
that this business does hinder the community?
Excuse me?
Does this business hinder the community?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes, it
I
does.
just want to make sure I was hearing you correctly.
Yes, it
And,
does.
and your name again? Your name?
Esther Monte.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for joining us. Next speaker?
Good afternoon. My name is Mabel Pittman. I have lived in that community for 40 years. When Tam moved into the area, it wasn't very well accepted. There are some people that will not say that. But me living in the immediate community, I know many, many people there. I'm a block captain there, and I hear the complaints. The community is not happy with it. Many of them are not here. Many of them will not come for fear. There's no reason to fear anybody but God. Just fear Him. But I would like to say that I pass that way just about every day. I am looking at prostitutes on Figueroa. I'm looking at prostitutes in front of Tam's. I have looked at people laying down there at Tam's. It's all over.
No, please keep,
Okay.
if you want to finish.
Okay. I have looked at people drinking in front of Tam's. We in the community do not have to lie. It isn't a nuisance. Okay?
Thank you, Ms. Pittman. Thank you. Next speaker? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Karen Lawrence. I'm with the 108th Hoover Neighborhood Association. I've been living in the area since 1996, and I am in agreement with the ruling that was done October 16th by the zoning administrator, Sue Chang, saying that it is a public nuisance. And I don't think that TAMS should disagree with some of the conditions that were established by her. Yes, they need a fence. Yes, they do. Yes, their hours should be restricted. Yes, they should. Video cameras. Yes, that would help cut down in the crime on that property. And a security guard. They have an ATM in front of their property. You go to the bank, there's a security guard there. It is a haven for people to hang out. It is a crime happening there as the police department told you. And these things that we asked for would help. They said they've been there 30 years. Well, I've been at my property since 1996, and I had to paint it. I had to fix some of the stuff in front of my property. So when you're there that long, there's some improvements. You have to invest in your business.
Thank you.
So yes, I agree with those conditions, and I think they should be upheld.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Arnie Corlin, Ray Robinson, and Mildred Bustillo, please come on up. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, council members. As a business owner in that community, who also is very active in business and trade associations to protect property owners and business owners' rights in this city, I often have to stand up for owners. However, in this particular case is another community member who also works with LAPD throughout the city, volunteering my time, teaching other owners how to control crime and nuisance issues, volunteering my time. I had reached out to this owner as far back as 2007. I had a conversation with Mr. Benetitos in, I believe it was May of 2011. I offered to help him. He was barely interested in his no trespass authorization. I went by that location again Sunday night. I could clearly see the activity that was going on. There was a community member. He has made a choice as another business owner not to be responsible. Personally, I don't even think that these restrictions are sufficient enough, so I hope you'll consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Ray Robinson. I'm a property owner over there. I actually been over there over 25 years and never patronized that establishment since I first been over there. Notice there's always people hanging out there. It's kind of dangerous and scary looking even to go by. To my knowledge, I don't know how the food is. I understand it's supposed to be good, but it's, like I said, it's a nuisance. I mean, you go over, even when you're at the gas station, you're trying to hurry up and get your gas because you never know when something's going to break out over there. I mean, there's always shooting over there. There's always fighting over there. Every now and then, I'm a married man, but every now and then I can get a glance of prostitutes over there with little of nothing on. And, you know, we do look, but just need to be done away with. I mean, we have our babies over there in that community, and we need to look out for our babies. That's our future, and something needs to be done. I mean, there's no way that should be going on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking the time. Good afternoon.
Hello, my name is Mildred, and I live in the community. I'm concerned about TAMS because when I went there one time, I was asked if I wanted to buy drugs, and I feel like my 7-year-old son should not be around that. So for that reason, I don't go there anymore because I see prostitutes. I see a lot of drug use in the motel, and it's affiliated with TAMS. Everything around there is just not decent for the community. I work in the community, and there's other businesses there that are better situated than that one. That should not be there, should go away.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for taking the time. Anita Tobias and Ethel M. Buckhalter. Anita Tobias and Ethel M. Buckhalter. And I'm not sure if the council office is here, but if you'd like to speak, they're welcome to. They're here? Okay. Please, ma'am.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. In the essence of time, I will not repeat everything that has been said, but I'm the chair of the 98th Street and Friends Block Club. And for about the last 2 years, that's been a constant complaint that the things that were going on over at TAMS, especially after the 2 murders, and just to piggyback on what somebody has said, just about 2 weeks ago, I've gone to pick up my son, and he hasn't been in the city since the year 2000. And he was saying that he wanted to go, well, Mom, I just have a taste for a pastrami. And so he was driving back, and he went to turn in. And because of the constant complaints that the Block Club has had, and we even signed letters, we sent in petitions. The Block Club has sent in petitions so that this entity can be looked at. I told him, no, we will not, patronize there. And it was like about 10:30 at night. There was no cars in the lane, but there were people standing out in front of there, and then there's a service station across the street, and people sometimes want to walk, and you walk by there, and you're getting cat calls, you're getting all kind of things that from the facility. So I am in agreement, along with the 98th Street Block Club, that there should be a lot of restraints put on. Most of the restraints that are listed in this paperwork should be put on the Tams burgers.
Thank you for taking the time, ma'am. Thank you very much. Our next speaker. Please give us your name.
Good afternoon. My name is Ethel Buckhalter, and I live in the area. So I've been living there for like 47 years. So I see a lot going on in the neighborhood. So the neighborhood is over there where Pam's is. It's not safe, and it's not clean, and so I see a lot going on. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for taking the time. We also have a letter for the record from the council member, Councilman Bernard Parks, who states that he would like to urge the Planning and Land Use Committee to uphold the ZA's determination and deny the appeal by the applicant, and for the reasons that have been cited by the speakers that we just heard. So that being said, colleagues, any questions? Councilman Englander.
Observations, and first, let me start off by stating that, one of the statements that was made by the representative of the applicant was that these conditions should be of last resort and not of first resort, that reasonable measures should be done first, and that the city has not exhausted their resources were the statements that were made, as I recall. We also had experts from LAPD, our senior lead officers, detectives. Arnie Corlin, who I know has worked tirelessly, by the way, a shout out to him and a thank you for working with so many businesses. The first that I've ever seen that on a pro bono basis and for many other reasons steps up to help businesses defend these types of actions and help protect themselves to stay in business. And I, for one, have always stated that I think the city needs to be more business friendly, that we've got to be more flexible and work with our local businesses. And hearing the testimony from the public and our experts and the business owner and his representative, I don't agree with all the conditions of the ZA as a recommendation. In fact, I'd go much further. And if it weren't so complicated, I would ask for an immediate revocation to close this thing down. This is a burger stand, and the fact that this burger restaurant has had 2 people killed there. All of the issues of drinking in public and assault with the deadly weapon and the property reports and the cocaine for sale, and you hear and reading about all these reports that are in here from the police department, and we've got copies of those in here. I'm shocked, quite frankly, that the owner and or operator has been so unresponsive. And therefore, and I've talked to the council office, I've talked to the LAPD officers as well, and I'd like to amend the recommendation from the ZA on items 11 and 12. Items 11, it says Sunday through Thursday, 6 a.m. to 12 midnight. I would suggest we change that from 8 a.m. I don't know that anybody needs to get a burger at 5 a.m., but that's up to them. We do have Meatless Monday in the city now.
Not on Mondays.
No, there is not on Mondays.
Just kidding.
So maybe we should close on Monday. But 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., Sunday through Thursday, and on Friday and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 11 p.m., as opposed to 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. So more restrictive hours. And on number 12, it says that the business owner operator shall retain a minimum of 1 California State licensed uniformed security guard during the hours of dusk until the business is closed for the day. I would change dusk to 5 p.m. And so it's a little more clear and we have a specific time. And I would also suggest to the community that, first of all, thank you for coming down here. There's no reason that we should allow businesses and whoever they are to operate in communities where kids are going to be going and families are going to get a hamburger and to get a meal. They don't step up to do more to protect their own establishment and have some civic pride. And if there's anything we should be doing here in the city, first and foremost, it's public safety. To have those folks come here and question the fact that LAPD hasn't done enough when they've been out there nearly 60 times just at that local location is beyond reasonable. And so those would be my suggestions.
Okay. So is that a formal motion?
Yes.
Okay, I'll second that. I second it, and there's, and I just need to make a comment. In terms of what happens in the surrounding area, one of the observations that was made to me from folks involved in this case is that when they go to this establishment, quite frankly, they find it, and I don't mean to slander, but they find it very dirty. There's the menus, the seats, the counter, the building, there's grease on the floor, there's grease everywhere. It's not inviting. And so I know we need jobs. I know we need to support businesses. But I think there's a notion of desirability to be inviting, to want to be there. And I think basic cleanliness is a very significant step, let alone everything else that we've heard. So I would support the amendment, and I would move that we deny the appeal and essentially filed by Nick Benitaitos for Thames Burger number 6, and thereby sustain the entire determination of the zoning administrator in finding the operation of Thames Burgers number 6 located at 10023 and 10027 South Figueroa Street is a public nuisance and requires modification of its operation to mitigate adverse impacts on persons and properties in the surrounding area. And I realize we're going through economic hardships. I understand from the tenant that spoke today that you're under duress given the economic environment you're in, but taking the time to clean, taking the time to keep it safe, taking the time to make it a proud location is something that would help and go a long way. Any other comments, Councilman? Okay, so that'll be the action of this committee. Okay, thank you. That concludes this item. Roberto, let's go to item number 1.
The next item, council members, is item 1, which is a planning department report relative to the issue of overheight fences in East Hollywood.
Okay.
Good afternoon, council members. Kevin Keller, City Planning. This is a report-only item on a proposal to establish an over and height fence district for East Hollywood, portions of East Hollywood. Here to give a quick overview, I'd like to introduce Brian Eck of our department.
Thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Brian Eck with City Planning, here to quickly take you through the tools available to City Planning to address the issue of over and height fences in East Hollywood. So on October 12th, 2011, a motion was attached to Council File 11-1735, was introduced and referred to this committee, which directed City Planning Department to report back on the various tools available to address the over height and fence issue in East Hollywood. Now, the specific area described in the motion is generally bound by Fountain to the north, Wilton south of Santa Monica, and Bronson north of Santa Monica to the west, Melrose to the south, and Normandy on the east, and this all excludes the area of the Melrose Hill Historic Preservation Overlay Zone. Residents in the area have expressed a desire to construct fences taller than currently allowed by city code and have cited certain public safety circumstances in the neighborhood as the reason taller fences are warranted. So per the council motion, staff has prepared the report in front of you, which outlines the existing code regulations, presents the zoning tools available to the department, summarizes the structure of fees associated with code compliance and zoning, and finally presents to you next steps that could be taken by city planning or another city department to address the issue. So currently the zoning code for front yard fences allows them to be no taller than 3.5 feet in height in the residentially zoned property. As indicated in the motion, property owners in the East Hollywood community have been cited by city inspectors for constructing fences that exceed the allowable 3.5 foot limit and wish to retain the taller fences. However, city planning does offer relief from fence height limitations through the individual variance, also considered as zoning administrator determination. Through the Planning Department Office of Zoning Administration, property owners may apply to build a taller fence, taller than the code allows, provided circumstances of their property are unique or warrant relief. Requests involving the potential for controversy can be scheduled through a ZA hearing, and this mechanism is found in section 1224X and 1227 of the code.
Thank you.
The second tool at the department's disposal is the establishment of a fence height district. It's a supplemental use district, and this would address the issue on a district-wide basis, as opposed to relief currently in place for individual properties. With a fence height district established, property owners would be allowed by right to construct a open wrought iron fence to a height of 6 feet. And there are additional regulations to retain visibility at corners and driveways with these taller fences. Included in this provision are fences must be set back 18 inches from the front property line. And this tool can be found in section 1310 of the code attached to the report. It is important to note that many of the illegally constructed fences may not meet the desired standards of the fence height district and would require modification to meet the setback requirements and the provisions related to public safety. As stated in the code, there are 2 routes to initiate a fence height district, either through collection of 50% of the owner or lessee signatures within the proposed district, or directly through council, city planning commission, or planning director actions. Let's see, the application for a fence height district is subject to a fee of $134,608, which, when initiated through signature, which is based on the recovery of staff resources needed to create a new district. And any proposed fence height district would be subject to the public adoption process and require approval by the Planning Commission and City Council. The motion further advised the Planning Department to assess the feasibility of alternatives in regards to standard city fees associated with over and height fences. City Planning collects the fees for either a zone variance or the establishment of the fence height districts, and each of those, again, are based on the recovery of staff resources needed to process a typical case. Relief from either of those may be considered by the City Council. However, that would require support from the general fund or other sources to complete the work. However, the fees that are really at the heart of this matter, those associated with property owners in violation of the zoning code, are the responsibility of the Department of Building and Safety, and any changes to those fees would require additional coordination between Building and Safety, Planning, and the City Attorney. And finally, I think it's worth noting that since the motion was introduced, correspondence has been received both for and against the establishment of the district. And Kevin's going to come back and talk about some next steps.
Okay, so the bottom line is we have a long way to go. We need to trigger a series of steps that will allow us to make a decision based on how the stakeholders engage the process.
Yeah, correct. Kevin Keller, City Planning. Again, we don't have a recommendation for you at this time. We wanted to lay out the options. Code requires a 42-inch maximum front yard fence. We do have a vehicle available to consider relief in height, and I believe the purpose of today is to have a chance for public members to weigh in, and then have the committee, if the committee so chooses, to refer it to staff to potentially follow up on next steps. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go through the cards, and then we'll have a set of recommendations based on the input from the public. So I'll call your name. Please come on up. And again, keep your eye on the clock. We're targeting 1 minute. Give us your name and address. C. Cowan, are you here? C. Cowan, I believe it's C-O-W-A-N. Patrick Agerkop, A-G-E-R-K-O-P. Sun, S-U-N, come on up. And Efren Gonzalez. Good afternoon, sir. Please give us your name.
Good afternoon. My name is Clarence Cowan, and I've lived in Hollywood and worked in Hollywood for about 46 years or so. I live at on Monroe Street in Hollywood, and I've had a...
Can you move the microphone closer to you? You can move it. It's flexible. You can move it towards you. There you go.
I've had a number of problems starting with the hedge that I had in front of the house. I was ordered to take it down, so I complied, and immediately someone threw a rock and broke my 7 by 8 foot window. I've had a number of accidents out in front. It's a corner property. I've had a number of accidents, and I'm here to support the proposal of over-high fences because the main issue is safety. Safety for our children and our property. Also, there are a few other problems. The existing laws.
Can you finish your statement and submit what you have in writing?
The existing laws promote. It pits neighbor against neighbor and residents against residents. And there are other areas of the city nearby that have high fences and high hedges, and nobody complains about that.
Okay.
So again, I urge you to allow us to have the safety factors that we need. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And again, I know you've written eloquent letters, but just keep your eye on the clock as you speak so you can get to your point. Good afternoon,
Good
sir.
afternoon. My name is Patrick Agerkop. I'm here today on behalf of some of the people in my area that have overheight fences and were reported on this issue. I want to walk you guys back for a minute and let you know how we got to this issue. About a year ago, a member from Melrose Hills reported about 200 community members of my area and some of the surrounding areas. This happened for no apparent reason, just this person likes to have low fences. These people that were cited have been struggling by this. I want to point out that for the last 20 years that I have been involved in my community, this gentleman has reported each and every one of his community members to building and safety, and they all had to tear their fence down. It has been a literal nightmare for the community and for my community right now. It takes a lot of galls to report 200 community members of an area that you don't live in.
Thank you, sir.
And then call yourself the victim.
Thank you.
Because that's what's happening here, and we need this overheight fence district. Thank you.
I appreciate that, sir. Our next speaker.
Hi, my name is Susanne. I live on Monroe Street. I'm here in support of the proposed fence height district. It's a working class neighborhood, and the current municipal code for the 3.5 fence restriction, it's outdated. It doesn't reflect what's happening in the neighborhood now, what's happening in society now. Even schools, they've increased their fence height to 6 and 8 feet, and yet we're not allowed to do that to protect the kids at home. There's homes in more affluent areas.
Can you speak into the microphone?
Sorry?
Speak into the microphone.
Okay, homes in affluent areas are able to go ahead and pay for the variance and build overheight fences. We're a working class neighborhood. Many of the fences that are currently being affected, they've been there for over 20 years, and now they're being suddenly cited with fines, fees, and penalties. And what we want is to be able to keep the fences that we have and create a fence overlay district so that the people who truly need it for safety are able to go ahead and have that fence and be able to afford it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Efren Gonzalez, and I am a board member of Hollywood Studio Neighborhood Council and Santa Monica Western Resident Group. And we're talking about safety, but safety is what I need, and I give you an example. Last year, LAPD was chasing a guy, and that guy, he was running in the middle of where I live, and they was pointing with a gun and call him stop or I shoot him, and I was in the middle of that chasing, and that's what I need. I mean, safety, and because was not a fence that the guy was running into my house, maybe if there was a fence, they couldn't stop the guy running into my house. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ziggy Cruz, Doug Haynes, and Darrell Stogsdale. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Ziggy Cruz. I am a resident in the area the proposed overheight fence district would be coming in, and I'm highly in support of it. This is an ordinance that has been around longer than most of us, and neighborhoods have changed. So having to live by outdated laws that don't protect the neighborhoods as they are right now, it's not a good thing to move forward. I think the overheight district needs to have a chance to take, the overheight fence district has to have a chance to take roots and make what I believe is a very, very good area safer for the communities and the people to come. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Doug Haynes. I'm with East Hollywood Neighborhood Council. I'm going to speak specifically to my district because we were included within the boundaries without really knowing that this was being considered. So it's kind of an arbitrary situation where my district was, which is near the 101 freeway. Most of the East Hollywood Neighborhood Council falls under SNAP, so the ordinance wouldn't apply. Certainly, as has been stated, this is not unique to East Hollywood in any way whatsoever. But the problem is the fences that are legal right now would still be illegal under the ordinance that currently exists. And the ordinance exists primarily for safety reasons. LAPD needs to be involved in any changes to that ordinance because if you're going to increase the height of a fence, you restrict the ability of LAPD to get into your property. There are certain things that should be included. The 50% signatures should really be a factor in this because you need to know who in the neighborhood is supportive and who isn't. And in my neighborhood, we've reduced crime dramatically, and my clock's about to run up, but I just want to say we have, since 2003, our crime rate was 450% above average. We're now below the citywide average, and it's not by creating barriers, it's breaking down barriers. And we are right next to the 101 freeway, but it's a very emotional issue, and I do support the community in their concerns on this, but other sides need to be recognized also. And also, as I said, LAPD should go over any changes proposed to the ordinance. And again, the boundaries really need to be addressed to see who wants to be part of it and who doesn't. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Haynes. Darrell Stogsdale. Then we'll have C. Lukert.
Okay. My name is Darrell Stogsdale.
Good afternoon,
I
sir.
have lived on Mariposa and Harvard Boulevard near Melrose for 56 years. Seen a lot of change. Time has changed. Times have changed. I want to say I think this is a travesty of justice that any one person can file this many reports and get all of this response representing we, whoever we is. I know who we is. It's one person. And I want to know just how many people this person knows outside of the Melrose Hill Historical District and in the district in which I live, Santa Monica, Normandy, Melrose, and Western. So I resent that, my money being paid for that and costing all these people who really can't afford it, period, to have to pay. So I agree with the other speakers.
Thank you. Very well stated. Mr. Lukert. Then we'll have Raul Munoz. Then we'll have, I believe it's, I'm having a hard time reading the writing. You're at 5444 West Monroe? All right, come on up, please.
Hi, my name is C. Lukert, and I'm a stakeholder in the Melrose Hill Extended Neighborhood, as well as the Hollywood Studio District Neighborhood Council areas of multifamily properties, and I'm responsible for the safety of families who live in the area. Properties do have overheight fences now, and they have had them for years, and they're put there for a reason. It's for safety. And especially when you rent to people, one of the concerns that they have is, will they be safe? Will their family be safe? And at nighttime, the properties that do have the overheight fences do close them, and it does help to deter unlawful and bad activity. There have been many instances where the police are chasing people. Of course, whoever's being chased will run into an area where there's no fence. They hide in stairwells, they hide in laundry rooms, they hide on hidden corners of properties, and having the overheight fences really is a necessity. More the safety issue prostitution. There's been killings in the area, in the neighborhood, and the Melrose Hill Historic District is kind of exempt from this because they're in their own little area. But in the surrounding neighborhood, the fences are needed, and we would like to have them.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Raul Munoz. I believe the next person is Jose, right?
My name is Raul Munoz, and I live in 906 North Normandy. I came to telling you we need the help from planning department. 4 years ago, on one of my days, one of my Sunday back to the school in January 2nd, and one of the gang members, they attack and they crack at the head in front of my house right on the sidewalk. And the police arrested the gang member, and the police officer, they came and talking to me, this guy, they go back to the jail for 25 years because they pull out the eyes to another gang member with the screwdriver, and don't worry about it. But the next day, in a noontime, the same guy, they come and knock my door, my main entrance door, with the church pastor, and they came to apologize and telling me to do not accuse him. They go to pay the medical bills, and that's what I'm put my front high fence. That's not height to me. That's not a height to protect my family. Okay. To keep away the bad people, because we are in a gang member junction. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time. Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. I apologize if I couldn't read the card here.
Señor Reyes, buenas tardes.
Por favor, más su nombre, por favor. Gracias.
En primer lugar, me gustaría decirles buenas tardes a todos los miembros de este comité. Quería pasarles un pequeño mapa de lo que es el kingdom de Mr. Ed Hunt. Y decirle, and telling you that he did not represent the 4,500,000 people that he said that they represent, because it's only 50 houses in Melrose Hill. And there is one of my predecessors against us. He said he also write a letter supporting fence specifically, and the reporting has been very selective, and let me show you why. I have here pictures of the fence in the same street where I live, and only me and the other neighborhoods behind me being reported. The rest, because they are white people, they don't be reported. And I have pictures right here. Mr. Ed Hunt, he's a liar. He's a liar. He's right here. He's a coward because he sent emails. If you have one of his email telling that we are criminals, do I look like I have a family in my gang members in my family? No, I have my daughter here with me and my other two sons. They're in the university. They are no gang members. So please help us to protect. I built that fence when they were childs to protect, because my mother take care of the kids. So I did that. And the ordinance is too old to change. We live in the country of the MS. The most dangerous gang in the country, and even outside the country. So please help us out. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you want?
Please submit it to the clerk, and
thank you.
I thank you. I understand it's a very passionate issue. And thank you so much.
Yeah, my name is Maria Torres, and I live at 5444 Monroe Street. And we need a fence because I have a grandchild, and I need your support because it's been a lot of crime and robbery around, and it's totally dangerous. We need the fence. Last time, 2 people shooting, and the shooting got in those right eye, I don't know, whatever you call, and it's totally. We need the fence. We really need for our family safety. And we're getting older, and if you live in that area, you will feel the same. You will need security. You need, your safety and your family. And I need a favor, and to help it out.
Thank you, Ms. Torres.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for taking the time. Francisco Velos, Leopoldo Gonzalez, Darrell Stogsdale. Good afternoon,
Hello.
sir.
Yeah. My name is Francisco, and I'm actually a new member of the community. I've been living there for 5 years. I live in between two people who have fences, and I know one of my neighbors recently, they got in through my side because I don't have a fence. They went through my side of the property, jumped behind through their fence, and they broke into their car. I'm not against. I think it's a good idea to have higher fences. I know in my property they constantly tag my driveway. I think that would be prevented if I had a fence. But that we're in talks with my landlord to do that. So I support it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. Please give us your name and address.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas
Mi nombre es
tardes.
Leopoldo González y yo vivo en la 5452 Monroy.
Si me permite, a ver si Roberto nos puede ayudar con interpretación. Por favor.
Yes, my name is Leopoldo González and I live, ¿cuál era la dirección, señor?
5452 Monroy Street.
5456 Mongol Street.
Yo vivo ahí 7 años que he llegado a esa zona.
I have lived there for 7 years.
Y pues la zona en realidad es un poco peligrosa
The zone is a little bit dangerous.
porque hay mucho vandalismo,
There's a lot of,
hay muchas prostitutas.
there's
en
a
la
lot of
calle.
violence and prostitution.
Ya, y pues por esa cuestión se necesitan las fences un poco altas.
And because of that reason, you need fences that are a little high.
Y también una de las cosas, lo más importante, yo pienso que la protección de la familia,
And
de los
another
hijos.
important issue is the protection of the families.
Y pues les rogaríamos que nos ayude en este sentido
And we would like you to help us in this sense,
para que se mantengan las fences altas.
and so that you can maintain the fences at a high level.
Gracias.
Gracias a usted, señor. Gracias. Yo no puedo hablar como intérprete porque es contra las reglas, ¿que no?
If you say so, Council.
Okay. Thank you. A simple yes would have done. Okay. Yes. Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Gerard Tasunian, resident at 812 North Hobart Boulevard. For the file, I'm a lifetime resident at my residence. I live right outside of the Melrose Hill HPOZ, which is part of the proposal for the expansion of that historic district. I am against having an overheight fence in the expansion areas of the Melrose Hill neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We have Kana, I believe it's Kana Torres, Edward Villarreal Han, and then we'll hear from the council office. Good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Kana Torres. I've lived on Monroe Street for almost all my life. I've seen it from where it was safe to where it is now. MS surrounds the whole area. Let's be realistic. 3-foot fences is not even going to protect me. My dogs can jump that, so I would really feel much safer if they were higher. And I hope you guys take into consideration how much time we've taken out of the day, and hope you guys listen to us and really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for taking the time and your patience. Mr. Edward Villarreal Hunt.
I'm Ed Hunt, 33-year resident and current president of the Melrose Hill Neighborhood Association. And we are generally a low fence area. We have a few tall ones mostly that have a variance. Actually, the ordinance, as we understand it, would not legalize any of the tall fences that we have in our neighborhood because of the requirement to move it back 18 inches and have visibility safety triangles at driveways. So we oppose the fence. We've taken several votes on that issue, and I think that the vast majority of our neighborhood would prefer to keep our low to no fence. We have a substantial number of our fences, of our yards have no fence at all, but we have no objection to the surrounding neighborhoods that do have high crime being tall fence area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, our last speaker is Alejandro Marroquin. Are you here? Long time no see. She was
Hi,
working hard
good
on the
afternoon.
weekend, so.
Yes, we were at the Glasso Park block party the other day. Good afternoon. My name is Alejandra Marroquin. I'm the Deputy District Director for Councilmember Eric Garcetti. First and foremost, I wanted to say thank you to the Planning Department for helping and assisting and providing the summary, and all the community members and constituents that came out today. So as you can see from the turnout, things are pretty split, pretty divided. But we do support the exploration of the creation of a overheight fence district. There are differing opinions about this. We've received letters, calls, and emails, and because of that, as a result, we'd like to make a recommendation on an outreach component to hear further from those that are not represented here today, either people that are for the overheight fence district and against as well. We also ask that planning come back to this committee with a scope of work and a budget for the public outreach plan. Additionally, we would like for planning to put the overheight fence district on the queue until these resources become available, and then can come back with methods on defining a boundary for an overheight fence district. So that's our testimony. That's our part of testimony for today.
Okay, so we will note and file this item and follow your recommendations as a council office in asking that we have a report back with the details and the conditions that have been described by the council office. Councilman Englander?
Yeah, if I could just add to that as well, if planning can work with and get information or input from public safety, from both LAPD and LA Fire, on how these proposed fences could be impacted in terms of public safety and personnel trying to reach these properties, and or LAPD may weigh in on it from a different perspective as well.
That should be incorporated so we can make an informed decision. And I think one of the items that has also been requested is that in your report back, apply the outreach plan and the background study so we can see the scope of outreach, so that those that are involved will know what steps we're taking to make sure that outreach has been completed. Are we okay with that, gentlemen?
Kevin Keller, City Planning. Yeah, I think we can take the input here and craft a short, brief return back, checking with LAPD and LA Fire. And just as planning staff, just to add, I know there was a lot of comments about individuals citing each individual. We're going to be looking at really the zoning code. It is an adopted ordinance. It's a city ordinance limiting fences to 42 inches, much like we limit setbacks and densities on properties, but there is a tool available for us to look at, so we can go ahead and, per the council office, draft up a report and report back. Thank you.
One quick question.
Just a quick question. On the existing fences that don't meet what's being proposed in terms of wrought iron and the spacing, would they be grandfathered, or would they have to be torn down and rebuilt?
Kevin Keller, City Planning. The fences, if a fence has been cited, it has no legal rights or grandfathering status. It's a fence that's been built in violation of the zoning code. It is a citywide code. It's not a new code.
Right.
It is enforced, essentially from time to time. There could be alternative regulations developed potentially for a particular neighborhood. However, we would want to review those regulations with the police and fire departments, because the overheight fence district was developed with these safety tools in mind. It's a very, as we've heard today, it's a very detailed discussion about exterior safety, interior safety, visibilities, cars backing out, pedestrians on the street, things like that. So that the tool in place today does require items such as an 18-foot landscape setback from the street, and also some visibility triangles where driveways or intersections happen to promote visibility. So we'd have to have that looked at. Fences that met those standards would then be approved under this ordinance.
And just for the record, my position on code enforcement is that you should have to be a local stakeholder, which has yet to be defined. On if you're driving around the city and making complaints, you should have to be some type of local stakeholder and or work with the neighborhood council at least to file that complaint, but not just those folks who just drive around looking for existing problems that have been there for 20 or 30 years and getting communities upset. And so I know that's not part of this, but I'd love to see something come back to say, let's be reasonable and not have this, these types of complaints that are driven by people that are just angry and wanting to stir things up. And they should have some type of local presence to file a complaint. But that's my position. It's always been my position.
Thank you.
Okay, good job with it. So we have the directive. We'll expect the report back How much time do you need?
I think we were looking, we'll meet with the council office, but I think they recommended early next year if possible, so we'll try to meet that deadline.
Okay, so sometime in January, we'll get some feedback. Okay. All right, so that takes care of items 1. Item number 2, I'm getting a request from the council office to continue item 2. And essentially, seeing no cards, we'll go ahead and we will accommodate that request to continue that item. So to make sure we have the folks here that need to be here. Is that accurate from the council office? We are continuing item number 2. Is that what you're asking for?
Correct. We are fine if you want to hear planning's presentation. That's up to you, or if you want to continue the whole item.
Well, let's just continue. There's no cards here, so we have item number 3 coming up if people have been waiting. So we'll just move on to item number 3. So we'll just continue item and we'll save the report for the next time. Thank you, gentlemen. So that will be the action of this committee. Okay, item number 3. Roberto?
Yes, council members. Item 3 is a proposed draft ordinance to regulate murals on private property citywide.
All right. Mr.
Hi, good afternoon. Tom Rothman from the Planning Department. This is the mural ordinance that was approved by the City Planning Commission last month on October 10th. Going to go over a brief history of the murals and the ordinances that regulate them in the city. Up until 1986, murals were not a regulated land use or art form or anything. They were just going up throughout the city. But in 1986, they were incorporated into the zoning code as part of the sign ordinance that called them mural signs. And then they went up legally. Up in 2002, there was a ban on billboards, and because of the nature of murals, they got swept up into the ban. So murals have been banned in the city since 2002. So for 10 years, outside of specific plans, sign districts, and public property, no legal murals have been allowed. No legal murals have been allowed to go up on private property. City Planning Department has been directed by our commission since back in 2008 to work on this, to have Los Angeles restored to its place as a leader in murals. And we've been drafting an ordinance since last year. Staff before me and continuing to me, we've done some outreach. We've had a number of hearings with the communities. We've had a staff hearing. We've had 2 public hearings with the City Planning Commission, and now we're here today. Murals go up now, as I said, on public property, but they're not allowed on private property. I'm just going to go over some main points of the ordinance that's before you today. First of all, as I said, we're taking murals out of the sign code. We're going to be putting all the regulations into the administrative code that will be administered by the Department of Cultural Affairs. The current definition for a mural is that it's a painting with no more than 3% text. And that's been proved to not be very definitive to keep out commercial messaging, because as we all know, commercial messages can be displayed by things other than text. So what we're planning on changing it to is our definition of an original art mural, as proposed before you today, is a hand-painted, hand-tiled, or digitally printed image on the exterior wall of a building that does not contain any commercial message. And for definition purpose, a commercial message advertises a business conducted, services rendered, or produced or sold. So that's what we're proposing today in front of you. Another thing that this ordinance does is it adds a definition of a public art installation. It also requires that public art also no longer convey or not convey commercial messaging. The requirements for putting up a mural that are proposed in the ordinance today is that new murals have a $60 fee, and that fee go towards the mural registration program. No fee will be required to register an existing mural, but we are requiring that existing murals do get registered at some point. Cultural Affairs will determine if the mural meets all of the requirements and regulations. There's a neighborhood involvement meeting. Murals must remain in place for a minimum of 2 years. That would disincentivize commercial messaging from being put up and taken down. So a mural must go up for 2 years, must stay up for 2 years, unless there's a change of ownership. So we've carved an exception for if you buy a piece of property that has a mural that you don't want up, you can remove it and deregister it with the Department of Cultural Affairs. The general regulations that are in the ordinance before you says that for new murals only, again, they cannot exceed the height of the structure, so you can't build something taller than a building to expand the mural. Murals cannot extend more than 6 inches from the facade, so I don't really think this happens too often, but you can put tile and pieces of sculpture that go up to 6 inches but no further than 6 inches. They cannot go taller than 100 feet, so you can't cover an entire skyscraper, but 100 feet is essentially 10 stories, pretty tall. It cannot contain electrical or mechanical components or changing images. That's basically not allowing videos and television types of murals. It cannot be placed over the exterior surface of any building opening, so to prevent super graphic types of murals that will cover doors and windows, that would be prohibited. And the ordinance in front of you prohibits murals from going up on single-family homes. All other types of land uses would be allowed to have a mural. We will, right now, there are 2 additional regulations that we have required for existing murals, that they do not exceed the 6 inches, and that they also do not contain electrical or moving components. That is in the ordinance in front of you. And lastly, I want to go over a few changes since the commission hearings. There's been 6 changes. We have changed the allowing property owners to receive compensation from muralists, and vice versa also. Muralists may receive compensation from property owners. Murals and public art installations must comply with the lighting standards that we've set forth for all signs in the city and for also all zoning regulations. So if it's a public art installation, it has to comply with the height standards that we have in that district. Digitally printed murals, those that are not painted or hand-tiled, must be approved and regulated by the Department of Building and Safety and by the fire department. So they must check to make sure that these banners or whatever type of materials are affixed to buildings don't fall down on people or catch fire. Again, murals are banned on single-family residences. That was a change from the original ordinance that went to the commission that said that they would not be allowed on buildings with fewer than 5 units. We've now changed it to fewer than 2 units. And we did allow existing murals can exceed the height limit. Can exceed the height of a building or the 100 feet. So that's a change. Those are changes. So that's essentially the ordinance in a nutshell. And I'm here to answer questions. And
Thank you, Mr. Rothman. I'll ask you to come on back. I'd like to invite the Cultural Affairs Department and welcome Olga Garay as well. I know you've been on the audience, and thank you for your patience. But your staff has done a tremendous job to give the planning department. They have stepped up. I do want to thank publicly the planning staff and former staff that's been involved with this project. It's been a lot of public hearings, a lot of public comments. Cultural Affairs has been there every step of the way, as well as the planning department and our city attorneys. To me, this is a very special ordinance in that it captures a heritage, a culture that makes Los Angeles very unique in its history within this country. So to me, to be able to understand that significance is important. So that being said, Ms. Garay, would you like to share a few words?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Olga Garay, the Executive Director of the City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs. I'm joined by my colleague, Felicia Filer, who is our Director of Public Art, and she has really been the leader from the department's perspective in shepherding this through, working with planning department. She has some comments to make, but I want to thank all of you for your patience in helping us work through this. It's been a very demanding enterprise because there's so many legal requirements. We wanted to make sure that we were receptive to a lot of different points of view from the different muralist communities. So I think that we're just almost right there. So I want to turn it over to Felicia and she'll walk you through.
And before Felicia speaks, I'd like to thank Building and Safety for their participation and support in this effort. Didn't forget you guys, so thank you so much, sir. Please.
Thank you. Felicia Filer, Director of Public Art Cultural Affairs. The first order, I'd like to submit a resolution by the Cultural Affairs Commission. The commission met last Thursday and wanted to submit a letter of support in favor of the proposed mural ordinance and recommends that and urges City Council and this body to approve the proposed ordinance. I'd like to submit this to the record.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Also, at the last CPC meeting, there were some very specific questions that the commission asked of our team about moving forward with the implementation of that were related to moving forward with the implementation of the new mural ordinance. Specifically, there was a concern about how we would notice we would notice the public about the new ordinance and the new registration process. And in talking with the Planning Department staff and Building and Safety, it was determined that that the city should institute a type of amnesty program whereby for the first 6 months after the ordinance has been enacted, that all murals or property owners that have murals on them can come in and have their murals registered in the existing conditions that they are, with obviously no fees, but that we would register those murals as is. In addition to that, the city has a database of about 369 murals that have been permitted over the years, that we would also notify those property owners that their murals are grandfathered in through this registration process. There would be no additional work for them, but we'd at least notify them of the new mural ordinance and the registration process. In addition to working with council offices, bid groups, obviously the murals community and property owners, that there is a new city ordinance and what the registration process entails. And then after the 6-month period, amnesty period, property owners with existing murals would still be able to register their murals, but they might run the risk of being cited by Building and Safety and or receiving a fine. So there was some consensus that we should allow this amnesty period as a way to roll out the new ordinance. Additionally, there was some concern about the maintenance and restoration and conservation of murals. In the administrative rules that we have been drafting in parallel with the development of the ordinance, the admin rules and the application will clearly state that the property owner is responsible for maintaining the mural, as well as, and if it's not the property owner, if there's a third party, there needs to be contact information about who is responsible for maintaining the mural, and that will show up in the administrative rules. Additionally, there was some questions about the visual artist rights and rights to artists in the event that a property owner wants to remove a mural. Currently, in our city guidelines, a property owner has to give a muralist or an artist 90 days notice if they're going to remove, alter, or destroy their mural. That would remain in place. These are state and federal laws that we would comply with. Again, that information would be stipulated in the application as well as the administrative rules, and we don't see any deviation from the current practices in this new effort. So I think those are sort of all of my comments relative to the very specific questions that we were asked at the CPC, and I'll be here to answer any specific questions that you have with the status of the ordinance moving forward.
Great, thank you. I think we have public comment unless there's questions. No? Okay. Okay. We'll take public comment. Okay. Thank you. Yes. David Diaz.
Look like David Diaz, but I'm representing him. He had to go to teach a class at Cal State LA, so I'm giving for the records a letter to the committee members, Dr. Diaz's previous submission to the Planning Commission, environmental report in relation to the public health dangers of finals, and so all this is here for the records.
Great. Thank you. And would you like to speak next? Please come on up. Would you like to speak? Yes, please come on up.
May I ask you a question before I do
Yes.
make my statement? Last time we were here on October 11th, Olga Garay presented the digital printed images in a PowerPoint presentation and the pros and the cons, or the pros of it. And the group of artists, and I'm Isabel Rojas Williams, the Executive Director of the Mural Conservancy of Los Angeles. And part of our mission, besides restoring the murals that you see reappearing quickly on the 101 and some in East Los Angeles, part of our mission is also to protect the rights of the artists. So many of the artists had approached us to see if they had the possibility to present a PowerPoint presentation. They had emailed all of you, apparently, and they didn't hear back. They have the PowerPoint presentation. It's only 12 minutes long, and they're ready to do it, and they tell me there's a screen there. They have all the connections, so they want to know whether they can do that, which would be more concise presentation instead of each one of them presented for 2 minutes.
If you have something in writing, like a hard copy, we can go with that. But I do want to keep it. The PowerPoint we won't do, because if I open up the PowerPoint now to you, then I'll set a precedent that every group that wants to make a point will be asking for PowerPoint presentations. So if we can keep each speaker to give us 1 minute of their presentation, I'll do that. But we can't do the PowerPoint.
Right. I understand your answer, but as I said, that was presented one side of the coin, and they just felt that they needed to present their points in the same manner. So I'm just requesting that if that's possible.
I understand, but again, if I start letting every stakeholder, every group provide a PowerPoint, we can be here till midnight.
Okay.
Given the number of cases we have.
There's no more than us. I'm from the Mural Conservancy, and then there's this other group, and everybody else spoke. So it's, it would be very perfect.
Well,
So-
you have 1 minute to speak
All right.
now.
Okay, my name is Isabel Rojas Williams, and I'm the Executive Director of the Mural Conservancy of Los Angeles, a non-profit organization that restores mural painting on the walls, as you have seen in the 101 freeway and at Strada Courts. I would like to focus on the following areas that we find especially problematic, and which we had outlined them in full in the letters that we had given already. Number one, residential unit restrictions. The stipulation in Section 8, Paragraph B7 of the ordinance that restrict our works on a single-family residence is unwise and inappropriate. There is no need for this provision in the ordinance, except perhaps to say that it should be decided by each council district. Number two, registration fees. We ask that a portion of the registration fees be reallocated towards providing building owners with information about their responsibilities and what channels they should go through before destroying a mural. We are confident more work would stay protected. Building owners are not our experts, and more often than not, murals are destroyed in ignorance of a better alternative. Number three, 100-feet limitation on murals. This arbitrary limitation offers no obvious correlation or benefit to the City of Los Angeles. Using the City of Portland's mural ordinance as a blueprint in the area of size limitation is both ineffective and misguided. Los Angeles is a city of another scale and should be treated as such. We thank you for your time and hope that you take the muralist suggestions into consideration when you determine the future of muralism in Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. Thank you for your hard work. And again, I apologize I couldn't do the
And thank you to
presentation.
you all for helping us.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Felipe M. Sanchez, Norma Montoya, Yami Montoya. Good afternoon, sir.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Felipe Sanchez. I serve as Associate Director for the Social and Public Art Resource Center, better known as SPARC. On behalf of Judith Baca, SPARC's co-founder and artistic director, she's teaching at UCLA today. Deborah Padilla is a bit under the weather. She serves as our Executive Director. SPARC supports the latest proposed mural ordinance draft as is. While it is not perfect, it is a respectable option to move the field forward. We can all agree that it is time to end the mural moratorium and to put our artists back to work and to allow them to work legally in the field. There should be no limit on mediums used by artists. We commend the inclusion of the fine art hand-rendered digital method as a part of the definition of the original mural. Spark has remained committed to serving our communities through art education projects and to preserving traditional methods of mural production, also in line with experimenting with new innovative techniques. So we encourage the Plum Committee to approve the mural ordinance, proposed ordinance as is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Norma Montoya, Yami Montoya, and Emily Winters. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Norma Montoya, and I'm in support of no bans, no fees, and no bans for single-family housing. I've been working with youth at risk in East LA for over 35 years, and I've seen firsthand how mural painting has been an essential part of life in repairing a broken community. Please, no fees for painting murals. The awards collected in my career as a volunteer muralist and community leader is a testament of how grateful and supportive our politicians have been about murals in East LA. Please, no fees.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hi, that was my mother. My name is Yami. I'm a muralist, and I'm really upset about the whole ban on single-family residences. I don't see why it's there. I've been raised in East Los Angeles. I see Virgen de Guadalupe on people's front doors all the time. This ordinance would say you can't even paint an image on your door. It says that no mural can go on a door. Also, the fee, you know, a lot of our work as community muralists is for the community and to change the lives of the people and bring arts on the most basic level, and to expect us to go through these hoops is a little ridiculous. Also, the 100-foot above grade, I don't really see why that's important. Also, at number 9, digitally printed restorative image murals. Can we call that digitally reproduced murals? Because it is not restorative, it's a replica. So if we use that, word restorative, it doesn't make any sense. So,
If I may say, Yami, you sounded very proud when you introduced your mom, so that was great.
Okay.
Thank you, Yami.
Thank you.
Thank you. Emily Winters, Noni Olabisi, and Susanne Thompson. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Emily Winters. I'm a muralist. I'm a co-founder and chair of the Venice Arts Council, and I was one of the first people to work with the Mural Work Committee with Tanner Blackman. And I think what they've come up with so far is certainly headed in the right direction. I'm glad to see that finally draw the line between art and advertising at this stage. But I do have some disagreements. One is I do not feel that the owner of the building should be able to have the mural deregistered to paint it out. It seems to me that that should be an agreement between the artist and the owner of the property as to how they handle that kind of situation. If you have a 5-year limit as to when it could be up, or whatever that limit is, that could be a contract with the owner and so forth. But I think it's really difficult for the artist to have somebody else determined to just take it out when they want to sell the building. I disagree with that very heavily. I also disagree with the single-family dwellings. I think if you have community out for any art that's showing to the community, if the community has an input to be able to determine if they like that mural or not, then that should be enough. I don't think you need to limit it to no single-family dwellings. I don't see any reason in that. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your input and your time and the work you've dedicated to this. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Noni Olabisi, and I'm not in favor of murals and digital murals being on the same, digital murals being murals, because it's very clear that murals are from one of the greatest teachers that ever taught me about murals is Spark, who said that murals are site-specific, and they are, that it's site-specific. That means that it's the community input. It lasts 10 years. I don't understand what's really going on with the confusion about digital and hand-painted murals. Murals are specifically hand-painted on walls, and digital murals is like a banner, and it's attached and nailed to the wall. What I would like to see prevail, because we have followed every step of the way of your compliances of what you wanted. We've been to meetings with Mr. Blackwell, and everybody agreed on the original mural, so I don't understand what we're going through, and I would love to see justice prevail today.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Susanne Thompson, co-founder of the Venice Arts Council, and from the original planning committee, or working group, I should say, that my council member Rosendahl initiated. And for some of you who may haven't heard this, he initially thought it should just be in Venice, and it was decided that we should bring it all the way through to the city. It should be an ordinance for the entire city. So I want to bring it back to Venice for a minute, because if you take away the single unit residency, people having murals on single family residencies, there'll be a lot of murals that we'll have to take down in Venice. So I think it's only been put in there by one council member, because apparently there's one council district in the entire city of Los Angeles that doesn't want murals on single family residencies. So I think it's really stupid to have that in there. So I really think you should take that out, number one. And number two, the fee, well, nobody's even talking about money for new murals. You know, the $60 a mural is going to be nothing. It's like, let's talk about real money. And then the other thing is vinyl murals. I've been listening to both sides of this. I'm not a muralist. I'm an advocate for the arts, and I preserve art in Venice. And I want to know who besides Spark is doing vinyl murals. And if Spark is the only one doing them, where is their educational component to help the other artists here that will be out of work if we are just going to be doing vinyl murals? Because they'll be a lot cheaper to do, and that's what corporate America is now doing, is making things cheaper and outsourcing. So will Spark become our new outsourcer?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Meredith Hammond and Carmelo Alvarez. Then Will Herron.
You want me to let the other speakers go first?
Why don't you hand that to the clerk, and we'll give you 1 minute.
You'll give me 1 minute?
1 minute.
Oh, wow, all right.
No, hand it to the clerk, please, if you don't mind.
Excuse me? I can give you mine after, sure, no problem.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, let me wait till you guys receive them so we can go over as much as we possibly can in this 1 minute.
Well, just give us the most important points that you can make within that 1 minute. We'll start your minute again, don't worry. Okay.
So we're going to start with the list of recommendations, which is the first page. Just to give it a run through real quick.
Go ahead.
Everybody ready? Oh, Councilmember Englander. Okay, if you guys will turn to the first page or the second page and see the list of recommendations that we've created. My name is Zara Bijan. I represent Beautify LA and the United Painters and Public Artists. We're a collective of over 200 public artists, muralists mostly, that have participated in this decade-long process of trying to re-legalize painting. So our first recommendation is that you remove the prohibition of murals on single-family homes. And our second recommendation, actually, you know what, instead of going through the list, let's just go straight. Go to the third page, please. Remove prohibition of murals on single-family homes. Why? Because murals increase property value. This is a violation of property owners' rights based on an unfounded fear of a proliferation of garage door murals. Less than 0.1% of homeowners have exterior murals on their property. Only avid art lovers would consider painting a mural on their home and should not be prevented from doing so. There's no other known ordinance that prohibits murals on single-family homes, and a number of neighborhood revitalization programs in residential communities, such as the Green Alleys Project at Jefferson High School, are utilizing public art as part of the strategy, and this restriction would eliminate these programs. These are programs that are beautifying underrepresented communities like South Central and Watts, Boyle Heights.
Well,
You can see some examples of murals on single-family homes.
I'm sorry,
that
ma'am.
I added.
May I interrupt? We are going to read this. We're not going to make a decision because I'm going to move to continue this item. I do want to digest what you submitted.
Uh-huh.
Don't let this 1 minute think that we're not listening. We are listening, but I need to be consistent with how we run this committee. So I want to thank you for your presentation. We are going to read this. I am going to read this, but that would conclude your 1 minute. I gave you a little bit more
I
than
did
that.
email this to you guys, all of you, and also I thought when Isabel asked if we could give this presentation on paper, that you said yes, and that you didn't say you can have 1 minute to give it, so that's a little confusing.
Then
to
I'm
me.
sorry. Then I should have spoken more clearly. I cannot set a precedent for every stakeholder to give us this type of presentation, because then I have to
Totally
do it for everybody.
How about I just have my colleagues that came with me continue to read through it with you?
If they like to, they have 1 minute, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next speaker?
We'll resume when the next people member is
Okay. Carmelo Alvarez. I strongly oppose fees for murals. Muralists and other public artists deserve to be paid a fee for their contribution to the well-being and economic development of this city. I recommend rewriting the scope of graffiti abatement contracting to include contracting for mural conservation and preservation of graffiti-marred and time-damaged murals. I suggest expanding the parameter of the 1% for the arts for the restoration of freeway murals and other community-based murals. I propose restoring a percent of the 14% transit occupancy tax for public art. The Wilshire Grand, the Ritz-Carlton, and the Marriott are being allowed to remit the TOT back into their own pockets for 25 years. The CLA's office recommended that the city sign this contract, saying that hotels generate tourism. I disagree. Art and culture bring visitors to fill the hotels and create those good union jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker, please come on up. Will Herron and Eduardo Mania.
Good afternoon. My name is Will Herron. You probably have seen me working on the freeway. I've been the muralist commissioned by MCLA to do all the freeway restorations. And also I'm actually working on mural restoration as well, that from an artist that just passed away from Mexico who put one up in Los Angeles in 1966. I'm also doing restoration there. But my main thing today is giving building owners a little bit too much power and allowing them to deregister an artist's work of art. I feel that it's important, like the way I've done it in the past, and I've had a written agreement with the building owner directly, and that agreement has to then be written and disclosed when the buildings get sold, so it carries on to the next new owner, that the owner does not have the right to get rid of the veneer. They own the building, but they do not own the artwork. The artwork is just a veneer attached to the real estate, but they don't own the actual artwork. They only own their own building. And the next thing, if I could say real quick, as a restorer and conservator for the last 20 years here in Los Angeles, I think that we really should examine the inclusion of digitally printed murals as a replica or a replacement for an originally hand-painted mural. And that's due to the fact that most of those will be printed on some PVC material, which you've already gotten rid of the plastic bags, and now we have all the vinyl wraps that all the billboards are using. But when this material is in close proximity to children, schools, libraries, it's very toxic, and it constantly emits a very toxic poisonous gas into the air that's really bad for most children as well. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker, Eduardo Mania. Good afternoon.
Hello, council members. My name is Eduardo Manilla, and I'm a community officer of the Venice Neighborhood Council. And I am here as a member of the Venice Neighborhood Council Arts Committee to say that the Venice Neighborhood Council will take a position on the mural ordinance before it goes to City Council. Councilman Bill Rosendale's original motion comes from this committee, and we have been monitoring it since and look forward to a final ordinance that we can support wholeheartedly in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. See no other cards. I first want to thank all of you for your hard work. I've been to several meetings out in the community. I've seen many of you sit through long sessions and discussions. You've been very patient, and you've been very generous with your knowledge, with your compassion, but more importantly, with the sense of wanting to see closure to this ban and get a real policy in place. I want to thank Councilman Weezer for his advocacy. He's been a strong advocate throughout this process as well. We both represent areas where mural is part of the fabric of our community. The art form itself has international presence, and so we want to continue valuing the gift that we do receive when you have this type of contribution that is artistic in nature in our great city. I wanted to ask Olga Garay or the Culture Affairs and Mr. Roth, would you like to come to the microphone? One of the points I wanted to make here is we have a substantial, and it's a fairly weighty product that gives us a lot of points that we want to consider. The type of discussions that you heard today or comments, can you give us any feedback as to your impressions so we can walk away from this committee with your reactions to what's been stated in public?
Tom Rothman from the Planning Department. I'm going to address the issue that has arisen with the Commission and here today about the number of units. We do have, before you, a ban on single-family homes. That has been reduced, as I said earlier in my presentation, from a ban on 4, 3, and 2 units to just on single-family units. We felt, because we are trying to have a very well-balanced citywide ordinance, that that would be the most palatable with 1 unit, and that in cases where neighborhoods want to have single-family homes also be allowed to have murals, we can do that through a supplemental use district or a specific plan. And likewise, in neighborhoods or in areas where they choose not to have any murals, they can also ban murals. So we thought maybe the one banning them on single-family homes would be the best baseline, and you can go up or down based on a specific plan, but to make it most palatable for the entire city, that's why we chose 1. We've gone down from, we basically just copied that from the Portland model, which had the 5 units. So again, this issue did arise many times before. The City Planning Commission dropped that number drastically from 5 to 2. So I think, again, we have tools in place in the zoning code where we can up it and down it.
But as policymakers, I mean, we're going based on another model from another city, but there's nothing that precludes us from being able to say, to eliminate that requirement and have it available to the whole city and let those who do not want murals to develop that overlay.
Certainly.
Okay,
so
we can go that.
Yeah, that's
so, okay.
But then that would be, so that would be a citywide ordinance of all, so any building in the city could have a mural then, citywide. But
Right. Okay. Councilman England, and then Councilman Weezer?
Yeah. What are the, so if there was first of all, let me just say that I've got several questions and concerns, but let me first highlight my support as well. We, in fact, have just begun a mural project, yet another one in our district, as you know about, and we're going to be doing a mural walk through and working with the Museum of the San Fernando Valley, a public art walk on the history of Northridge and the history of the San Fernando Valley. We've got several murals there now. We're going to be adding a lot and enhancing the area, and so I'm really excited about that. But in terms of overreaching as well and oversaturation, I have got some concerns over the idea of everything but a single-family structure. I think it's looking at ways to change that in terms of tightening it up a little bit, but then allowing it for other places that make sense. Seems to be, or having a little more controls over the fact that we would be able to have some input into that. So we've got plenty of space and wall space on commercial structures and other structures now, where if we go beyond, looking at duplex and triplex and those kinds, I've got a lot of those in my area. There's not a lot of those throughout the city of Los Angeles and other districts. They're mostly either single-family or a lot of multifamily. But we have a lot of duplexes and triplexes as well, and so I think it needs to look at an area by area, and if we're going to go just citywide and say everything but single-family, it's very broad. There's certainly a lot of wallscape now to allow plenty of murals. In fact, we've found many of opportunities just as we're launching our public art walk and asking for muralists to step forward, and we've been working aggressively for that for the last couple of years now. Actually, it's ready to launch. But so I think we need those kinds of tools. The other thing is one of the questions I had on what number A, it was 1A on the property where the mural is located is sold. It says it shall be there for a minimum of 2 years, even if the property is sold. And so is there a process now to allow an owner to apply for removal?
You may be looking at an older version, I'm not sure, but we did say that there's an exception to the 2 year. There would be one exception to requiring that a mural stay up for 2 years, and that would be a change of ownership. So a new owner would be able to deregister a mural should they choose not to want to continue it.
Okay, so new owner would not be required. This must be the old version that I have here. It's draft B4. It says it at the bottom. B4 and B5, it looks like. Well, this clearly must be an older version.
Look at number 5 below it when it says change of ownership.
Yeah.
So the covenant would require 2 years, and then number 5 is the change of ownership. Upon a change of ownership of the property to which the mural is affixed, a new owner may deregister the mural with the Department of Cultural Affairs and terminate the covenant.
Okay, and then the other question on required maintenance and graffiti abatement and removal, is there any elements that speaks to that as well? I might have missed that. So if they use something that isn't the right paint, or something happens, or a car hits that wall and part of it's rebuilt, I mean, what happens in the issue of, we don't want to be driving around the city, certainly, with any unintended consequences when we're looking down the road, trying to do the right thing. Oftentimes, when you try to do the right thing, little things happen. And certainly we can't plan for everything, but so what do we do in ensuring they're maintained?
The mural maintenance responsibility will be listed in the administrative code and the application on the registration application. That's where it is detailed that the property owner is responsible for maintaining the mural. In addition to that, the Department of Cultural Affairs has for years produced a booklet that talks about mural production. It also talks about within this document, it talks about wall preparation, types of paint, how to make sure that your materials are compatible, as well as how to conserve them. So we can modify this document and submit it as an attachment to the administrative rules and the application, so that the applicant understands the technical aspects of producing their mural in the event that the muralist doesn't know.
And then on approval, it says here that it appears, let's see, that the mural ordinance will require interagency cooperation between Cultural Affairs Department, Planning Department, Department of Building and Safety to implement. Is there an approval of every mural that comes through with a rendering, or we do have that for banners on where council offices are the ones that actually sign off on and submit banners for approval. Do we have any type of submission?
Well, there will be a submission to register your new mural. You're going to have to go to the Department of Cultural Affairs, but again, they cannot judge whether or not the mural should be approved based upon its content. They are really just going to go down a checklist to make sure that all the things I read in, the 6 inches extension, the no moving parts, the higher than 100 feet.
So my concern is, yeah, and I get that, and nor should there be on the content, because that's the nature of art. But the fact that is there a process at all for if there are any for community outreach or folks that don't want a mural near a location when one's being submitted? What is that part of the process?
Part of the requirements are that there's a neighborhood involvement meeting. If you go back to the section you were looking at where you were at number 4 with the covenant,
yes.
Right above it is number 3, the neighborhood involvement requirement. New mural artists or property owners must hold a community meeting to discuss it. under no circumstances can the community ban it based upon the content, but they can certainly have input and talk about it.
Well, input, and so how, the process though, input is one thing. So to have a public conversation, how is it that, is there any type of discretionary action on any of these at all where somebody can either deny it, or so they're all automatically by right no matter what? If
Automatically by right as long as they meet the checklist.
I've got it, yeah, but the checklist, while it's very detailed, it's very broad at the same time, and not having some type of check and balance where either there becomes an issue of some kind of oversaturation, or who knows what other types of issues can come in. It doesn't seem to be any type of a process or a point in the process where there's an action that can deny it at all if they meet all the conditions.
You're correct. Yes, there is no discretion to say no under any circumstance other than the mural does not meet these requirements.
And as long as since we have the similar type of process with banners, did we ever consider looking at or at least adding to this process the same type of like the banner, street banner requirements or process?
We could take a look at. I'm not sure which items in the banner.
That's for nonprofit organizations. It's not for advertising at all. It's the street banner stuff is for when neighborhood councils or people are doing a community fair, or they're advertising for LAPD, but not advertising for commercial at all. Or they're honoring veterans. They're just doing it for a holiday. We don't allow commercial advertising in banners any longer, and there's a process then that council offices submit on their behalf. So at least you have that checks and balance.
Yeah, City Attorney here. Can I just interject a little bit?
Mr. Fong, please.
Yes, just to give you a little bit of background. When it comes to this ordinance that's before you, the mural ordinance, we've worked on this for many years, and Portland, who we modeled the ordinance after, they have what's called a time, place, and manner ordinance. And when it comes to the First Amendment, a city can be, it's much safer for a city to regulate based on physical characteristics like height and size and spacing. And that way you're not going to get a First Amendment lawsuit directed at you. And so if you want to add, more stringent criteria in the way of physical characteristics, you can do that. But you don't, as Tom says, you don't want to look at the content and say, we like these type of murals and then we don't like these others based on what they look like. That really wouldn't work.
Well, I don't believe we do that on the banners either.
Well,
submit it on their behalf.
That's true, and that's in a different part of our code. And I have talked to the city attorney that's working on that, and I believe in the next few years we'll probably be refining that as well. But there's a little bit of a difference because those are on public property, and here we're regulating murals that are going to be located on private property.
Mm-hmm. Well, for one, then I would like to see something that goes at least beyond just the only restricting single-family homes. I think it's way too broad at this point. We can always add to it later. That's my perspective. We can always come back in 1 year. In fact, I would suggest, and I'd move that in a formal motion, that they don't include duplexes, triplexes, or fourplexes at all, and that we come back in 1 year with an update after it's been implemented to see if things need to be refined, and we can revisit how things are going with it as well. So we have an automatic update in 1 year, since this will be new, and we just don't want to even see we want to see more, but we don't want to see an oversaturation as well. So there's got to be some kind of balance.
Okay, the original proposal did ban duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes in addition to single-family homes.
The original one, but that's gone.
You're right, but that was brought down by the City Planning Commission.
Right. So, but we can modify it and amend it out of this committee.
You could certainly change the types of land uses where murals would be allowed.
Okay, and was there a lot of public outreach to neighborhood councils throughout the city on this as well?
Yes, there was tremendous outreach. Staff before me, we've gone out to Nancy Neighborhood Council Plan Check, the land use arm of all the neighborhood councils, numerous times on this ordinance. So they've been kept pretty much up to speed on the
We've
progression
gone
of
through
this
the whole
ordinance.
circuit. I mean, I've watched them go through a whole series of engagements, and it's been very intense.
The last thing on this, is there any types of streets where they're not allowed? In other words, if it's just a residential street, will those be allowed on residential streets as well? In residential neighborhoods?
Yes. There's no zoning restrictions on this at all.
And how would a community then, if you opt out, if they didn't want these in their residential, if they have an apartment building, for example, where the back of a building or a retail store, and that back of the retail butts up to a residential community, and they don't want a mural that they're going to have to see every day, and nobody else sees it except for perhaps those few community members, and I can think of quite a few examples of where they wouldn't make sense. Is there a process for them to appeal it or not?
Well, again, these are going to be allowed by right. There's not going to be a hearing for all of these. There's not going to be a hearing for any of these. There's only going to be that neighborhood involvement. If we want to change the standards, if you want to ban them in a certain neighborhood, you could do that with a specific plan. If you want to allow them on single-family homes, you could create another specific plan. And if they want to make an exception from that, then there would be a public hearing. But generally, the way it's drafted today, no public hearings, only the neighborhood outreach. And again,
I'm not looking to make a public hearing, but at least some way where perhaps if a number of residents petitioned that they didn't want it, that couldn't stop it in this case. There's no way to stop it.
Well, the only avenue they have is that neighborhood involvement program where they could suggest to the artist that
they can make suggestions, but they can't
correct
work with them on another location or do anything but that.
Right. They would be doing something by right, something that's allowed by the zoning code and by the administrative code. So there will be no way to say it would be just like, not being able to build a single family house on a single family lot. That's the way this is set up.
Okay. So, well, for one, I'd make the recommendation that we, if we could, I'd move that they come back in a year once it's been implemented for an update. But that we also restrict at a minimum.
So you'd like it to go back up to the 5 units?
5 units.
Right now it's at 2 units and above. Now you would like it to be 5 units and above.
5 units and above, which is what this was originally modeled after.
Well, I could not second
I
that,
think
Councilman. I guess this is one. Please, let's respect the speaker's time. I'm of the point of view that, and I'll give an example, Councilmember. I have several areas in my district where murals actually help deter tagging. And so most of these residencies essentially are R1. And I find myself working with our young people, driving their energy in developing murals. So now it becomes a teaching tool, it becomes a gang neutralizing tool, it de-escalates the level of homicides, because now we have youngsters working with organized entities to have these locations as a canvas.
I got an idea.
And the communities embrace it. And so to me, the multiplier effect is astounding, and we save lives. And I'm not being overly dramatic. So I think the vehicle here is and the reason I wanted to continue this, because I think it's a very healthy discussion. I wanted to digest everything we heard, everything that was submitted in writing, and go through this process and value the time already allotted in this. But I understand you have something to say.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I absolutely see that throughout every area throughout the city, and in fact, and that's one of the reasons we're working with young kids to add this program throughout this area in in the Northridge area that got a lot of those concerns and has had a lot of tagging. And having said that, it's also not a one-size-fits-all city. So what I'd like to see then is perhaps coming back with where it has the restriction of the 5 or more, but having a process to easily allow, under some discretionary approval process, perhaps working with the council office or some other means to allow it on all structures, but to have some kind of process where it's allowed.
I think it can go both ways.
I think there's a way to work that in. Absolutely.
We could also contemplate letting it occur throughout the city and then put the blankets where they don't want it. So that way, and that will be the money to just paint a mural is money these entities don't have. And the money to organize a specific plan is money that does not exist in these areas. My gut tells me the areas that do have the wherewithal that would not want this probably have the greater means to introduce those blankets to stop it.
Okay, and with that...
It's just a back and forth.
I don't agree that that's necessarily the case in all those cases, but if we look at the banner program, for example, they don't have to do that. It's as an example, it's a council motion. The nonprofit organizations that have no money and no means to do it, where they're simply promoting, whether it's a fair that they're doing at a park, whether it's a parade on behalf of a local school, they don't pay us to put in a motion on their behalf, and it creates a free process for them to do it. So you could easily do it under those other circumstances, and you wouldn't.
I think what we can do, Councilmember, is I want to get to a win-win. So let's keep this dialogue on the record. And if there is a tool or a mechanism where we don't impose a hardship on our abilities to express our art in places where people want it,
I agree.
Let's find that vehicle. I don't want to make this a class issue. I don't want to make this a neighborhood council versus neighborhood council issue. I want to make it a city solution. We are hurting for our expression in art. Our youngsters are dying. Our schools are shutting down art classes. We as a city need to nurture it. So let's work together to figure out how we can address your concern.
Absolutely agreed.
And also look at what we need to address so that we can get to that win-win where it doesn't inadvertently create a cost that keeps it from happening. And that, I think, would be the ideal. If we can work with our experts, with Mr. Fong, our city attorney, has been an amazing steward in this process, and see if we can find that vehicle to reach that point. But I don't want to get confrontational. I don't want to have one part of the city fighting the other part. I want us to work together because I think we can all benefit from this. So we'll find that vehicle.
Agreed.
Councilmember?
Yeah, well, is this item going to be continued?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, well, just where I am right now is that I do agree with you, Mr. Reyes, that we need to delete the residential limitation for new original art murals. And I also have some other amendments that hopefully we'll give to our planning staff, and you could look at them by the time we come back. They have to do with the reference to works of art to be specifically included in the definition of public art installation, and to include the phrase original work of art in the definitions of original art mural and vintage art mural. So these are just some amendments we'll pass around, and hopefully we could discuss them in the interim by the time this gets back to committee and go from there.
Great. So seeing no other questions, I'm assuming, we're going to try to button this down in the first month of this coming year. My next committees are pretty booked up, but I wanted to get to this now because we need to maintain that momentum. So again, I want to thank my colleagues for their patience. I think we're going to do our best to find that vehicle and look at perhaps January 15th. Well, that will continue to that date, and that'll be our goal, and hopefully get to a place where we can deliberate in a manner that we can find the win-win. So that being said, that'll be the action of this committee. Again, thank you, staff, for your hard work, and all the volunteers and all the artists and muralists involved. And We have one more item left, Roberto?
Yes, Councilman, the next item is item 5, which is a modified draft ordinance to the bicycle ordinance that was previously in this committee.
Okay, these are just directives that I have, and I did have one card on this. Zara Bujani. Zara, are you here? Zarabejaune. Bijan. Item 5, did you have a comment on item 5?
Oh no, I wrote the wrong one.
Okay, all
I
right.
wrote the wrong number.
I mean, we have the whole staff. Okay, that's okay. All right, well, thank you guys. It's late. But I do have just a directive to concur with the Planning Department technical corrections recommendations. It's November 14, 2012 report. 2, request the city attorney to prepare revised bike parking ordinance in lieu of the August 13, 2012 city ordinance. In lieu of the August 13, 2012 city attorney prepared version. And 3, request the city attorney to prepare a revised ordinance to amend LAMC 85.04 bicycle parking zone / racks. And that's the extent of the instructions, and I'm looking at the staff, and they're all agreeing, thumbs up. So that'll be an action of this committee. Second, Councilmember 5. So that'll be the action of this committee, and thank you for your patience. Roberto, anything else on the queue?
Yes, item 8, I don't think there's a weekly status report from planning.
I don't see one now.
And then public comment, Councilman.
Public comment here. Anybody for public comment? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.